Hi everybody, it's Seth, your Mild Mannered Mage, and welcome to another episode of War Council. Today, this episode is all about the playing of games, because our commander that we're going to be talking about is the Celestial Toymaker. This commander is from the latest Doctor Who Secret Lair, Regenerations, I believe was the name of it, and he is a rogue artificer, and he is in the Esper colors. And I was really intrigued when the Toymaker came out, and I'll tell you why, and it's based off of his ability. So the Celestial Toymaker, Esper 2/4, Rogue Artificer. When the Celestial Toymaker attacks, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Exile any number of them in a face-down pile and the rest in a face-up pile. Defending player chooses one of those piles. Put that pile in your hands. And I feel like that's just a really interesting factor fiction on a stick. And it's like, well, can we make basically what's a factor fiction deck? And so I started doing some research around factor fiction and the type of cards that will cause you to have opponents basically, do factor fiction type effects, and there's a lot of cards out there that will do that. And it's really interesting because basically a factor fiction type effect will then trigger the Toymaker's second ability, which is at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses 2 life for each spell or ability that caused one or more players to guess or group cards or permanents into a pile this turn. So that is just crazy to me. So it's not just, oh, you did it once and then, each opponent's going to lose 2 at the end step. No, it's every instance that you're able to chain together a fact or fiction, each opponent is going to lose 2 life. So if you're able to do 4 instances of a factor fiction effect, that's going to be 4 times 2. That's 8 life that they're going to lose. And that's each opponent, not target opponent, but each opponent. So you can drain all of your opponents out each of your turns. And it's not just your turns either. It's at the end of each end step. So it's, there's actually some of these effects that are instant spells, so you can trigger them on your opponent's turns. Or if you have, depending on how you build this deck, you can make it so that you can cast things at instant speed. So, you can cast your sorceries at instant speed, or, at flash speed. I did not choose to build this deck in a super competitive mode. So this is probably maybe a good 6, week 7, I would say. I didn't build it as mean as I could. I could have gone a lot meaner, with a lot more stacks effects, harder counter spells in there to keep opponents from playing. I don't like those types of decks. I did, throw some counters in here, a couple of stacksy types things just for protection, but I could have done a lot more than what I did. But this deck is super fun to play. My play groups have really enjoyed it because it is so different and unique, and so I'm really excited to be sharing this deck with y'all today. So as we always do throughout this video, we're going to be sharing some arena codes. So to kick things off, here's our first arena code. So here you go. And we'll be sharing some more of these arena codes throughout this video. So we do like to break these videos up into different sections. Now, if this is your first time joining us in a War Council video, I don't just break this up into, you know, well, I do lands separate, but I don't do things like here's your mana rocks, here's your creatures, here's your instants, your sorceries, your enchantments. I try to do them into some different sections just to kind of make, you know, kind of talk through how the deck actually functions. So I hope that y'all enjoy this deck. When we get back, we'll be walking through our lands, which will probably be the quickest section, and then we'll really be diving into the meat of this deck. So hang tight, and we'll see you in a minute. All right, and we are back, and we're here talking about the Celestial Toymaker and the games he likes to play. Yeah, if you've seen the episode The Giggle of Doctor Who, you know, Neil Patrick Harris played him with a little bit of a German influence, so my attempt at a terrible German accent. So we've got the mana base here, at least the land base for the deck, and really it's nothing super special. I do have a handful of plains here, a handful of some swamps, and then from swamps we go into our islands. I do have a Rivendell just to be able to have that scry ability, you know, being able to toss to the bottom anything that doesn't really, that I don't need right then and there. And then from there, our specialty lands. This deck is rather blue heavy in the creatures, so I do have a large blue mana base. But other than that, there's really nothing special in the land base. I don't run an Herb Organ here. There's not a Cabal Coffers. Just a very simple mana base here. I haven't found any really big mana tricks to do in this deck that really I feel like would make a difference. It runs pretty efficiently off this mana base, or at least this land base. I do have a couple of rocks. Those are in a different section. But this is just the land base. You know, nothing too terrible. I usually run, I try to run about 35 lands in my decks. I found that that's a pretty sweet number, kind of a sweet spot for my decks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, oh, 33. Okay, so I've got 33 lands here. So that's actually less than I thought, but yeah, so there you go. So 33 lands. Let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, 33. Okay. That's way less than I thought, but oh well. Okay, so, but yeah, that is it. That's all the lands that I run in this deck. And like I said, it seems to run fairly efficiently. So when we get back, we'll be talking about some mana acceleration in the deck. So what are we going to do to start producing more mana outside of our land base? So we'll be back in just a minute. All right, and we are back with our next section of the Celestial Toymaker Commander deck, and this section is dedicated to mana acceleration. And then, so this is what are we going to do? What sort of cards can we include in the deck to make it run a little bit faster? You know, we've got our 33 land base. What else can we do to kind of help speed things along? So the first card we have, Commander Staple, Commander Sphere, 3 mana for a tap, add 1 mana to your mana pool of any color in your commander's identity, sack it, draw a card. I feel like that's in just about every commander deck. Another commander staple, Soul Ring, tap 1 mana, tap it, add 2 colorless mana. Then I also like to include this in any deck that's 3 colors or more, Chromatic Lantern. Especially with this being an Esper deck, you're not going to see as many ramp spells in white, blue, and black. So this really helps us, tie our colors, get the colors that we need so that we can cast the spells that we want to. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color, and then it in and of itself will tap for 1 mana of any color. Next we have an Azorius Signet, 2 mana, pay 1, tap it to add a white and a blue mana, which is really nice, especially if you have a colorless land. Suddenly that colorless land will produce a white and a blue. Or if you have something like a Soul Ring, now that Soul Ring will produce a colorless mana and a white and a blue. So you're getting 3 mana out of it instead of just the 2. I also have in here, we'll go ahead and skip to another couple that are in here. I also run a Dimir Signet, 2 colorless for a tap, add a blue and a black. So same as the Azorius, just in Dimir colors. And then we also have an Orzhov Signet as well, 2 colorless, tap, add a white and a black as well. So again, trying to do some color fixing so that we get all the colors that we need out of our decks, so that we can be able to cast all the spells that we need to. Next we have Land Tax. Now this is probably one of the more expensive cards that is in the deck. This deck in and of itself is not very expensive to get put together. I think on Moxfield, when I priced it out, it was maybe around $350. A lot of the cards I already had. I think I ordered maybe $20 in cards to beef it up. This is one card that I already had, and again, probably one of the more expensive cards that I added. At the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for up to 3 basic lands, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. So that's before your begin of turn draw. So you're basically thinning out your deck of your lands. That gives you a land to play, and then a less of a chance that you're going to draw a land on your turn. And then, being able to just thin your deck out so you can get to the other cards that you need in order to play the game. This is a great card in the deck. Again, not having the ramp of green, this really helps to get you those lands that you need. And for it to be 1 white mana, playing it on turn 1 or early game really, really helps out. We also have, again, a commander staple, Mind Stone, 2 colorless mana, tap to add a colorless, and then pay 1, sack it, tap and sack to draw a card. Fairly new card that I've added in here from Dominaria United, Defiler of Dreams, 2 blue and 3, Flying Phyrexian Sphinx, 4/3. As an additional cost to cast blue permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost a blue mana less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of blue mana you pay, so we're making our blue spells cost 2 less by using some of our life. Whenever you cast a blue permanent spell, draw a card. So this is reducing the mana cost of our cards. So again, mana acceleration. What are we doing to be able to play the game faster? And we've got the added bonus of being able to draw cards. Sword of the Animus, a really good ramping equipment. 2 mana for a legendary artifact equipment. 2 to equip. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So you're being able to get the lands that you're not going to be able to ramp for if you were in green. So you're getting those lands that you need, and then putting it onto the battlefield. Plus, you're beefing up your creature that's equipped. So, and this is on attack, not on damage. So that's even better. You don't have to worry about making contact with a player. You're just getting that triggered swing. Solemn Simulacrum, Sad Robot, as we like to call him at my LGS. 4 mana for a golem. 2/2. When he enters the battlefield, go search your library for a basic. So again, getting those basic lands out of your deck, giving you a little acceleration. And then when he dies, you may draw a card. So perfect blocking fodder. Do the chump block, draw the card. New commander staple, Arcane Signet. 2 mana, tap it, add 1 mana color. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. So this is a perfect mana rock for your commander decks. And then lastly, I also included Sword of Feast of Famine. I like to include equip this to the Toymaker. Gives him +2/+2, so taking him from a 2/4 to a 4/6, so making him a little bit beefier, giving him a bigger butt so he can take a little bit more damage. Also giving him pro black and pro green, so that makes him harder to block. And then whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all your lands. And that's the key part. When he deals damage, you untap all of your lands. Again, accelerating your mana by untapping your lands, you can play more things. So that makes it easier to cast those gaming spells that we want to play in order to trigger his ability. And that's it. That's all of our mana acceleration that we've got in this deck. And this really helps to get the deck moving and grooving so that you can cast those gaming cards and get all of the abilities that you need. Let's go ahead and let's give away another arena code. Let's make sure it is not upside down. So here's us an arena code. There we go. All right. And when we get back, let's talk games, because that's what we're here for, is we're here to play the games. So when we return, let's check out what sort of games the Celestial Toymaker has up his sleeves. See you in a bit. And we are back, and we are here to play some games with the Celestial Toymaker. And in this section, we are going to be talking about those games. And again, these are games that are going to be triggering a fact or fiction type effect to trigger the Toymaker's second ability. Now, he himself on attack triggers that ability. Again, don't forget, when he attacks, look at the top 3 cards of your library, exile any number of them in a face down and pile and a face up pile. Defending player chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand. And then at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses 2 life for each spell or ability that caused one or more players to guess or to group cards or permanents into a pile this turn. Alright, so we've got a fat stack of games to play, so let's take a look at them. First up, we have Barnyard Parlay. This is from a commander deck, and that is for 2 black and 5. Exile up to 5 target creature cards from graveyards. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put all the cards from the pile of your choice onto the battlefield under your control, and the rest into their owner's graveyard. So we're stealing creatures from other people's graveyards to put them under the battlefield under your control. So just as simple as it can be. Next up, Manifold Insights. Again, from a commander deck. One of the commander sets. Blue and 2. Reveal the top 10 cards of your library. Starting with the next opponent in turn order, each opponent chooses a different non-land card from among them. Put the chosen cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So that gives, 10 cards, so you're bound to hit a lot of non-lands. So you're going to hopefully get something good, and you can maybe politic your way into some good stuff. Sphinx of the Clear Skies. Now, this deck is actually pretty Sphinx heavy because a lot of Sphinxes have this type of effect. So Sphinx of the Clear Skies, I think this is from Dominaria United. 2 blue and 3 for a 5/5 flying. Ward 2 Sphinx. Domain, whenever Sphinx of the Clear Skies deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control, so hopefully that will be 3. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Piles can be empty. So that's one important thing to remember is you can have a pile with no cards in it. So if one of your opponents wants to get in your good graces, they could have one pile with no cards and one pile with all the cards, and you can take the pile with all the cards. Next up, Master of Predicaments from Core 15. Again, 2 blue and 3 for a 4/4 flying Sphinx. Whenever Master of Predicaments deals combat damage to a player, choose a card in your hand. So this is a different game. That player guesses whether the card's converted mana cost is 4 or is greater than 4. If that player guessed wrong, you may cast the card without paying its mana cost. So hopefully you get a free cast off of that. Next, Truth or Tale, and this looks like it is from Time Spiral. Blue and 1 for an instant spell. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library and separate them into 2 piles. An opponent chooses one of those piles. Put a card from the chosen pile into your hand, and then put all the other cards revealed this way on the bottom of your library in any order. Then we've got Sauron's Ransom from The Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth. Blue, black, and 1. Choose an opponent. Look at the top 4 cards of your library and separate them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put one into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Then the ring tempts you. I had to go find a ring tempt guide just to include with this deck so that I can remember what that does. Now this is an interesting card. I can't remember what set this is from, but it's Phyrexian Portal. 3 mana for an artifact. Pay 3. Target opponent looks at the top 10 cards of your library and separates them into 2 piles. So you look at 10 cards. Choose one of those piles and remove Let me start over again. Target opponent looks at the top 10 cards of your library and separates them into 2 face-down piles. Choose one of those piles and remove it from the game. Search the remaining pile and put one of those cards into your hand. Shuffle the remaining cards into your library. Ignore the effects if you have fewer than 10 cards in your library. So that's kind of an interesting one. So look at the top 10, separate it into 2 piles, remove one of those piles from the game, and then from the other pile, choose 1 card. So that's kind of fun. Then we have the Liar's Pendulum. 1 mana, I think this is from Shadowmoor maybe. 1 mana, pay 2 to tap it, name a card. Target opponent guesses whether a card with the name is in your hand. You may reveal your hand. If you do and your opponent guessed wrong, draw a card. So that's a fun way, if they don't know your deck, that you can try to get them to guess and get a card draw out of it. Then we have Factor Fiction itself. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one into your hand and the other into your graveyard. That one is an instant spell. Unish, Chrysosphinx Sovereign. 2 blue and 4 flying. Sphinx spells cost 2 less to cast. I think this is from something. It's from one of the Egyptian sets. I cannot remember the name of it now. It'll come to me later. Whenever Unish or another Sphinx enters the battlefield under your control, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So this is good to get out before your other Sphinxes, because then when the other Sphinxes enter, then he would trigger. Jace, Architect of Thought. So the reason why he's in this pile is for his -2 ability. Reveal the top 3 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one of those piles into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library in any order. Now this is also good because his +1 until your next turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, it gets -1/-0. And then if you can get him to -8, for each player, search that player's library for a non-land card and exile it. You may cast those cards without paying their mana cost. But really you're looking for that -2 ability. Fortune's Favor, blue and 3. Target opponent looks at the top 4 cards of your library and separates them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put one of those piles into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Then the Toymaker's Trap. This is from the recent Doctor Who set. Black and 2 for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, secretly choose a number between 1 and 5 that hasn't been chosen. If you do, an opponent guesses which number you choose. Then you reveal the number you chose. If they guess wrong, they lose life equal to the number they guessed, and you draw a card. If they guessed right, sacrifice the Toymaker's Trap. So like I said, there's a lot of cards, and we're maybe halfway done. Maybe a little more than half. Hostile Negotiations from the Brothers' War. Exile the top 3 cards of your library in a face-down pile, and exile the top 3 cards of your library in another face-down pile. Look at the cards in each pile, then turn a pile of your choice face up. An opponent chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard, and you lose 3 life. Intrude the Mind. This is from Murders at Karlov Manor. 2 blue and 3. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. Separate them into 2 piles. An opponent chooses one of those piles. put that pile into your hand and another into your graveyard. Create a 0/0 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, then put a 1/1 counter on it for each card put into your graveyard this way. So I like this one because you get an additional creature out of it. When I was playing the Murders at Karlov Manor pre-release, this actually won me a couple of matches because of the Thopter I got out of it. Gave me an extra blocker, an extra... I could cast it at my opponent's instep, and that gave me an extra attacker too. Brilliant Ultimatum. Remove the top 5 cards of your library from the game. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. You may play any number of cards from one of those piles without paying their mana cost. That's even better. Epiphany at the Drown Yard. Blue and X. Reveal the top X cards +1 from your library and separate them into 2 piles. An opponent chooses one of those piles. Put that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. I mean, the hits just keep on coming. Sphinx of Athun. 2 blue and 5. Flying 5/6 Sphinx. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. I mean, come on. Conundrum Sphinx. 2 blue and 2. Flying 4/4. Whenever it attacks, each player names a card. Then each player reveals the top card of his or her library. If the card the player revealed is the card he or she named, that player puts it in his or her hand. If not, that player puts it on the bottom of their library. I mean, it's kind of funny, all the Sphinxes that are in here. Death or Glory. White and 4. Separate all creature cards in your graveyard into 2 face-up piles. Remove the pile of an opponent's choice from the game and return the other pile to play. So you get all your creatures back. The 7th Doctor. This is an interesting one from the recent Doctor Who set. White, blue, and 3. Whenever the 7th Doctor attacks, choose a card in your hand. Defending player guesses whether that card's mana value is greater than the number of artifacts you control. If they guess wrong, you may cast it for free. If you don't cast a spell this way, investigate. So either way, you're either going to get a spell for free, or you're going to be able to investigate to get a clue to draw a card later. And then finally, Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths. Black, blue, and 2 for a human advisor. Menache 3/2. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library, separates them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put one into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So lots of games for us to play. I mean, look at all these ways that we can play games. And then attacking with the Toymaker as well is going to trigger a game as well. So, lots of ways to have fun with your opponent. All right, so we've got our games that we're going to play. Now, what are we going to do to defend ourselves? When we get back, we're going to take a look at that. We'll see you after the break. And we are back, and we've talked about our land base. We've talked about how we're going to accelerate our mana. We've talked about the games that the Toymaker will be playing. And now we're going to talk about how we're going to protect ourselves during our commander match. And so we've got our stack of protection right here. So let's take a look and see what we're going to be using. First up, we've got Austere Command, 2 white and 4, choose 2, destroy all artifacts, all enchantments, destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less, or destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 4 or greater. So this is a great way to kind of sweep the board, get some of the problems out of the way, get all the big creatures, get all the little creatures, get all the artifacts, the enchantments. I mean, It's just, choose whatever is causing the most problems and get them out the door. Now, the problem is it will affect your board, but, most effective board wipes are also going to affect you as well. Grand Arbiter, Augustine the Fourth. Now, I did say that I did include a couple of stacks pieces in here, and I was really struggling with where to put this, whether to put this in the mana acceleration or in the protection. I decided to put it in here, but white spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Blue spells you cast costs 1 less to cast, and then spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast. So this is going to hopefully slow your opponents down a little bit and make it harder for them to play the game. An offer you can't refuse. New staple: 1 blue mana counter spell, counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. Blind Obedience, white and 1, does have extort. Whenever you cast a spell, you may pay a white or a black. If you do, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain that much life. Artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Again, trying to slow down your opponents and make it easier for you to win the game. Flawless Maneuver, white and 2. If you control a commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. This kind of helps out with some of the board wipes that are in this deck, or if somebody else casts a board wipe. Makes it so that you can effectively cast things like Austere Command and not have to worry about losing all of your creatures. Darksteel Mutation, enchant creature. Enchanted creature is an insect artifact creature with base power and toughness 0/1 and has indestructible, and it loses all other abilities, card types, and creature types. So, got a big baddie that needs to be turned off. Darksteel Mutation, and now it's a bug. Aqueous Form. So this is good for putting it on the Toymaker because when he does have a nice attack trigger, and with Aqueous Form, enchanted creature can't be blocked. Also, whenever a enchanted creature attacks, you get to scry 1. So then, you can take a look at that top card, see if you want it for his attack trigger. Kaya the Inexorable. This is from Kaldheim, white, black, and 3. I like her for her top 2 abilities. First ability, put a ghost form counter on up to 1 target non-token creature. This is great for the Celestial Toymaker. The ghost form counter says it gains when this creature dies or is put into exile, return it to its owner's hand, and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So you get to bounce him to your hand, and then you can recast him for just the regular cost of the card, and then you also get an additional creature out of it. And then the -3 ability, exile target non-land permanent. So again, trying to get rid of any problems on the board. Swords to Plowshare, commander staple, remove target creature from the game. Its controller gains life equal to its power. Sea Rift, good old Cyclonic Rift, great way to clear the board. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, or overload it and return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Path to Exile, again, commander staple, exile target creature, that its controller gets a land. Fumigate, destroy all creatures, you gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. Wrath of God, destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. McCready Lamplight Mare. So this is from the new Fallout set. White black for a 1/3. Whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less, Toymakers 2, attacks, it gains Skulk until end of turn, and that means it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater attacks, its controller loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater attacks you, its controller loses 2 and you gain 2. So this helps with making sure that the Toymaker can't be blocked, and if it is blocked, it's by a smaller creature. The second Doctor, this is a really good card from the new Doctor Who set. White, blue, and 2. Players have no max hand size, which is really nice. So that's a good way to kind of help out the table, and hopefully they won't attack you. And then how civil of you. At the beginning of your end step, each player may draw a card. Each opponent who does can't attack you or permanents you control during their next turn. So they get a card, but in return, you have protection from them their next turn, which is great, early game, mid game, late game. The 11th Doctor, white, blue, and 1 for a 3/2. Whenever the 11th Doctor deals combat damage to a player, you may exile a card from your hand with a number of time counters on it, equal to its mana value. If it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. But what we're looking for is the 11th Doctor's second ability. Target creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked this turn for 2 mana. So you're essentially, giving it an aqueous form, making it unblockable for just 2 mana. And then lastly, Vraska Betrayer's Sting, 4 black and a Phyrexian black. We like this for the card draw, which is 0. Draw a card, you lose 1 life, and proliferate. And then the -2, target creature becomes a treasure artifact with sack this artifact, add 1 mana of any color, and loses all other card types. So basically, turning off a creature and making it into a treasure. We saw the Celestial Toymaker do that in the Giggle, turning basically people into ball pits, which was rather terrifying. And this is what we're going to use. This is our arsenal to protect ourselves from the other players, and it's rather effective. It did its job. So next, we're going to look at how else we're going to try to draw some cards and get what we need to win the game. So hang tight, and we'll see you after the break. And we're back, and now we're going to be looking at, we've got our games, we've got our mana, we've got our acceleration, we've got our protection. How else are we going to try to draw some cards? And we've got that stack right here, so let's take a look at that. First, we have Camille's Obscura Oculus for Esper and 1. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. It connives. Then choose another attacking creature with lesser power. That creature gains double strike. And then to connive, you draw a card, then discard a card. And if the discarded card is a non-land card, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So you get to loot, draw, and then discard. Next, we have Ledger Shredder, which is really good. Blue and 1, flying 1/3. Whenever a player, including yourself, casts their second spell each turn, Ledger Shredder connives. You draw, then you discard, and if it's a non-land card, he gets a 1/1 counter. He gets big quick, especially if you can cast him on your second turn. Hitsuga and Kiari, 2 blue, black, and 2 for a legendary Ogre Demon Dragon. When they enter the battlefield, draw 3, then put 2 from your hand on top of your library. So you're going to ponder, I think it is. And then when they die, exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. If it's an instant or sorcery, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So, great ways to try to draw some cards. That's my Plains puppy, Miss Frizzle. Always security-minded and making sure that I am safe. So, Next, we've got Classic Phyrexian Arena. 2 black and 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card and lose 1 life. Then we've got Archaeomancer. 2 blue and 2 for a human wizard. When Archaeomancer enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Now, I know that's not card draw, but technically you're returning a card from your graveyard to your hand, so you're getting a card to your hand, so it's kind of card draw. But you're also going to be trying to get one of those games back to your hand so that you can drain your opponents using the Toymaker's ability. Baleful Strix, black and blue, for a flying death-touching bird. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Classic commander staple. And then finally, Increasing Ambition, black and 4. Search your library for a card and put it into your hand. If it was cast from a graveyard, search for 2 cards and put those into your hand, and you can flash it back for 8 mana. And that's how we're going to try to draw some extra cards. Speaking of drawing some cards, let's get y'all some cards for... Oh, no, that's not the right pile. Let's get y'all some cards for Arena. Let's get a different color Arena code. Let's get a nice red one. Here we go. So here's a nice Arena code for some drawing of some cards. And there we have it. All right. So we've got our mana, we've got our ramp, we've got our games, we've got our protection, and we're drawing cards. The last thing we need to do is we need to put a bow on this and win this game. And we're going to talk about that in the next block. And we'll do that when we return. Alright, so we have our commander, the Celestial Toymaker. We've got our mana base, we've got our ramp, we've got the games we will be playing. We're going to protect ourselves and draw some cards. Now, how are we going to wrap up the win for this? So I've got a couple of cards here that are going to help us to secure the win for this, this commander deck. So first up, we have... Demilich. Now this is kind of an interesting Adventures in the Forgotten Realm skeleton wizard. 4 blue mana, costs 1 blue less to cast for each instant and sorcery spell you've cast this turn. When it attacks, exile up to 1 target instant and sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it, you can cast it the copy. And then you can cast it from your graveyard by exiling 4 instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard in addition to paying its other costs. So I included it in this section because by attacking and exiling the instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard, this helps you to cast more of the game cards, the game instants and sorceries, to be able to stack more triggers for the Celestial Toymaker to drain your opponents more, and the faster that you drain them, the faster it is that you will win the game. Next, we have Glamdring. And Glamdring is kind of in the same realm as the Demilich. Glamdring is from Lord of the Rings, Adventures in the Forgotten Realm. 2 mana, 3 to equip. Equipped creature has first strike and gets +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery spell in your graveyard. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to the damage without paying its mana cost. Again, casting more of those game cards to try to be able to stack the amount of triggers from the Toymaker to get as much damage drain as possible. Then we've got Adric, Mathematical Genius, blue and 1 for a human artificer from the Doctor Who set. And we've got him in here for his ability. He's a 1/1, but for 2 and a blue and a tap, Copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. So copying this triggered ability of the Celestial Toymaker so that you're getting that effect twice at your end step. And then you can also pay 1 and a blue to sack him to counter target activated or triggered ability. So holding up 3 mana to be able to activate him at the end step to get the ability twice. Again, getting layers of that damage in place. Then we have Blood Chief Ascension, which is kind of a fun card. 1 black mana. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life, Celestial Toymaker, at the end of each end step, if they made a choice, they lose 2 life. Put a quest counter on Blood Chief Ascension, and then whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if it has 3 or more quest counters on it, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So again, stacking the amount of damage that they're losing at the each turn. Then we've got Approach of the Second Sun. This is just kind of a fun card to throw in here. If this was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win the game. Otherwise, put Approach of the Second Sun into its owner's library, 7th from the top, and you gain 7 life. And then stacking that with the games, so you're hopefully going to be able to get that into your hand in some way, shape, or form to be able to recast it and win the game. The last 2 cards that I've got here are very similar, and I think I was able to get them both out in the last game that I played with this deck, and they are just like, they're like swinging for the fences. The first one, reprint from the Doctor Who set, Wound Reflection. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. So triggering the Toymaker, then triggering Wound Reflection, instead of losing 2 life at each instance, they would now lose 4 life. So again, stacking that damage up. And then pairing that with Bloodletter of Acolytes, I think. 3 black and 1 flying. If an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. So that I was able to get both of those up, and the math on that was just phenomenal. And I was able to basically knock out all 3 of my opponents in one go round. And that's it. That's the deck. It's a lot of fun to play. My opponents that I've played with it, they get annoyed at the games and the loss of the life and everything, but they kind of enjoy it because it is so different. It's Factor Fiction Tribal. It's a lot of fun. It is so much fun. And again, we're all looking for something different to play. So I hope that each of you have enjoyed this episode of War Council and this new Celestial Toymaker deck that I have put together for y'all. I do have one last arena code from y'all. This looks like it is from the Outlaws in Thunder Junction. So let's throw this up here. And if y'all will just do me a favor and like and subscribe, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to turn on notifications so you know when I do drop new videos, and that way you can go in and snag those codes so you can get them before anyone else. In the meantime, this is Seth, your Mild Mannered Mage, wishing all of you some happy magicking. Y'all have a great one, and we'll see you in the next one.